It's hard being an artist, you know? There's no one there to tell you to go do the thing but yourself. And if someone can do that for a long amount of time, I have respect for them, even if I aesthetically don't like what they're doing. That sense of the community here, I think is very important. And I think everyone just kind of sees what everyone else is doing and kind of reacting to it as well, you know? And that's why I take it upon myself to like do quality work that I'm very proud of, that it's not just phoned in sometimes, you know. I want to inspire people being like, dang, like look at his production. That's kind of what sets me apart from a lot of other people, is my production, is that like I've just produced so much, and like I produce so much in a short amount of time. So I try to nurture that within my community. When I see someone that's really good and talented and only needs a little nudge in the back to be like, yo, go do something bigger, or like take it to the next level every time. Yeah. Guatsi, I'm Jesse Littlebird from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Laguna and Gila Pueblos. I've been painting for the past 3 years. We're at Secret Gallery with my solo exhibition, Upward Mobility. A lot of my upbringing comes from oral tradition, and so a lot of stories and looking at things cinematically. So having always like this narrative kind of structure with things. Then with like painting in 2D mediums, it's like you want to have some freedom to completely like go away from a lot of that more structured stuff. An overarching theme of a lot of my work currently, and ever since I've been painting, has been iconography, attacking ideas of what painting can and should be, but at the same time borrowing a lot from the past. And so like from past artists, past not even painters, but like, you know, composition within photography, composition within filmmaking, and stuff like that. With this series, it's kind of really only like a preview of everything else that I have done in the past. Major theme that I have is this idea of like collective action, collective movements of peoples, displaced peoples, exodus of peoples. So like kind of like these religious, almost biblical undertones to things that are happening nowadays, and then prophecies that I've heard as a kid in my own oral tradition, being Pueblo from here in New Mexico. So I've been painting ever since I walked into my dad's studio when I could barely walk, and started messing around with his expensive oil paints. And instead of scolding me, he kind of just nurtured me to always convey ideas visually. I've been painting for the past 3 years full-time and more. This is what I do full-time for my living and career right now. I think when you're showcasing work, limitations are actually your friend. So here at Secret Gallery, there's one wall, and so you're kind of limited by space. And for me, I work large scale, so kind of curating things down to some specific pieces that are going to relate to each other and balance with each other and play off each other. I've always kind of been of the thought that painting should be like a mirror to someone. So when someone views something, they should reflect on themselves. That's a lot of how I look at work. And so I wouldn't necessarily want to be so overt in telling people what they should feel, you know. If you're going to choose to be a painter, I always respect the ones that do things big. I would sketch a lot in my like sketchbook and stuff, and so I started thinking about like, man, this is a cool little sketch, but it would be so much confidence in the statement when you do something on a larger scale. All the artists, all the painters that I look up to, they all did huge, big paintings, you know. Cy Twombly, Rothko, you know, obviously Jean-Michel Basquiat and Keith Haring and Juan Miro. So there's just something about scale that grabs the attention of the viewer. When I was younger, I was like, I didn't know the possibilities of like even, to me it seems kind of silly now because it seems so obvious, but like I'm like, how do you like make such a large scale piece of work? You know, I thought like you had to cost like thousands of dollars to like stretch a canvas that big or anything. Or you have to go buy it, you have to pay for it. You're limited to whatever you buy in like the art store, you know. But the more that I went into my process, DIY, do it yourself, I was like, you know, using cheaper materials, you know, or just finding any means necessary to get it to a large scale, really is a commentary on, I think, my generation being more do-it-yourself, and figuring stuff out and just learning because the internet, you know, because like back in the day, you had to go to a prestigious art school, learn how to stretch a canvas, do all these things, you know, but like just figure it out on your own. I use a lot of, I say in most interviews that Lowe's is my art store, just like industrial quality materials. House paint, learned that from Rocky, just going to Lowe's and getting the cheap oops paint, the ones that they mess up and stuff like that. I think with a lot of younger artists, they get too attached to like, oh, I only have a certain amount of budget to pay on these art supplies, so I gotta like use them up, you know, like real preciously. And I'm actually trying to change my practice up in these years in that I'm really aware of where materials come from. We use a lot of toxic stuff, a lot of stuff that's not good for the environment. A lot of artists do, you know. And so it's like trying to figure out more or less the act of something is the art, and differing from like straying away from the actual physical objectness of it itself. Being put on a stage and a scale, and then like having people look at your work and think, oh well, this is clearly inspired by your culture. Trying to like get away from those preconceived notions, you know, is part of art. You know, is that's a part of like what you're saying, and like being aware of that if you're going to be making stuff, you know. And there's nothing wrong too either with just like celebrating culture, celebrating folk art, but like the old adage goes, the status quo, I'm not even going to bring race into it, but if the status quo does art that's inspired by my culture, then that's considered modern art. But if I do it and it's my culture, then it's just considered folk art. And at some point, the art world decided that folk art was lower than high-end art. So I kind of am really attacking that and trying to, like, I mean, in just this scene here in Albuquerque, put that out there to people. I think, so a major thing that's gonna have to happen for it to grow is a lot more support from the city itself. And, you know, there are people that kind of kiss up to, you know, people that work for the city and think that they're doing a lot, but like honestly not really in comparison to what other cities' budgets for arts programs are, or even support for artists. So I think the city of Albuquerque like really co-ops all the artists here and all the creativity that is here. You know, they don't really give back into it. They kind of just capitalize on it. I don't think that's right, and so a lot of my activism comes even in saying that, you know, just being vocal about that. So for things to change, I really do think that there needs to be, a lot of people got to set aside our differences, and I don't know, there's been like a million collectives, a million different groups and everything, but like if we were all on the same page that like if people, nurturing people's value in themselves of their work and their time and building on that, and to the point where we like, you know what, we all value ourselves. Now we can go to the city or whatever institution or powers that be and be like, this is what we want, what we need. If you know, and hold people accountable to like, you say that you're for the community, you say that you're here to help artists, you say you're here to help disenfranchised people, let's do it, you know. And just, yeah, that's, I mean, just telling people, I mean, we have so much power in like our voices and asking and not being afraid to ask, you know. Because people like really want this stuff, they don't even know how to ask for it, you know.